Can anybody hear me?
Yes, Catherine, I can hear you.
Thank you. My video doesn't seem to work. I'm going to restart and I'll be back.
Okay.
The folks online can't.
Okay, so I'm going to keep talking until Vahid, is that a Vahid problem or is that, Michael, can you hear me?
We're good now.
Okay.
Can now.
Oh, now we can. All right. So it's still 4:02. Let's call the meeting to order. So I'm going to work through some of our logistics, then we'll do a roll call, review the agenda and objectives for today, and open up for public comment and dive in. So I'm going to do the safety briefing for those in the room. Note that we're on the third floor of the building. In the event of a fire or fire alarm, we'll ask you to exit through the door in the northeast corner of this room, go down the steps to the second floor, and exit through the main entrance by the reception desk. We'll meet in the courtyard outside that entrance. In the event of a medical or fire emergency, please call 911 and notify staff at the front desk. This is my big test. The nearest defibrillator, not bad, all right, defibrillator is mounted on the steps leading from the reception desk down to Grand Avenue, and a fire extinguisher is located in the corridor along the side of the dais just behind the wall. For some hybrid meeting, those joining in person, if you have a laptop and you're using it, make sure you're on mute as you, and turn the audio off so we don't have any interference. We'll ask that you use the microphones throughout the meeting so we can both hear in the room, and for folks online, you'll press the button on the base. To turn it on.
Recording in progress.
Is that because of the recording? Okay. Your mic is on if the button is lit up, which you might have to cover with your hand. It's hard to see. And then please mute yourself when you're done speaking. For those virtually joining, stay on mute when not speaking, and you can raise your hand. We'll be attentive to that to come off mute and to contribute. If you end up on the phone, or if you are on the phone, *9 raises your hand and *6 will unmute. We do have closed captioning available if that's helpful for your participation. So let's start with introductions. I'll ask folks joining virtually to start. Need a little help probably from my colleagues, but I'll start with you, Michael.
Michael Liu with Fubon Shopping Center.
Thank you. Yesenia?
Hey there, Yesenia Delgado, she, her pronouns, SHS manager in Multnomah County.
Thank you. Chair Harrington?
Good afternoon, Catherine Harrington, Chair of the Washington County Board of Commissioners.
Let's go to our other chair, Chair Smith.
Good afternoon, everyone. Tootie Smith, Chair, Clackamas County Board of Commissioners.
Welcome. Vahid.
Good afternoon, Vahid Brown, he, him pronouns, Clackamas County Health, Housing, and Human Services.
Zoe.
Hello all, soy Copiano, she, her, Community Action, Washington County.
We got Councilor Lewis.
Good evening, Christine Lewis, Metro Council District 2, and my apologies, I'm in transit tonight.
Jesse Adams.
Hi all, Jesse Adams, she, her, Washington County Homeless Services Team.
Patricia.
All right, good afternoon. Patricia Rojas, I use she and her pronouns, Regional Housing Director for Metro, and I apologize, I have to leave early today.
Good, thank you. Is there anybody else online that I missed? Yesenia went, right? Yep. Okay, so let's move to folks in the room. Jess just got here. We'll go Commissioner Jayapal.
Good evening, everyone. Sushila Jayapal, she, her pronouns, Multnomah County Commissioner.
Thank you. Mercedes.
Mercedes Elizalde, use she and her pronouns, and Director of Advocacy at Latino Network.
Thank you. Nicole.
Good evening, everyone. Nicole Larson. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the city liaison at Imago Dei Community.
Thank you. Abby.
Hi, I'm Abby Ahern, use she, her pronouns, and I'm a member of the Metro Tri-County Planning Body team.
Yep, Valeria, jump in.
Hi, I'm Valeria McWilliams, I use she, her pronouns, and I'm with Metro.
Hey there, Liam Frost, use he, him, his pronouns. I am from the Metro Housing Department.
I guess I'll go to myself. Ben Duncan, he, him, Kearns and West, your facilitator. Ariella.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ariella. I will be developing the meeting summary today.
Thank you. Malia.
Malia Dieters, she, her pronouns, program assistant for Metro.
Matt. I got.
Matt Chapman, he, his, co-chair.
Thank you, Matt. Jess.
Good afternoon, Jess Larson, she, her pronouns, from the Washington County team.
Great, thank you. Did I miss anybody? Has anybody joined since we did that? Doesn't look like it. Great, so we will walk through the goals of today. We'll approve the February meeting summary. So really, actually, I'll come back to the objectives for today. So just walk through the agenda. We're going to create spaces. We'll do our meeting summary approval. We'll create some space for public comment. So those who are joining that would wish to provide public comment, please raise your hand if you're in the audience, and we'll promote you at that time. We'll get some staff updates reflecting on the survey and the process reflections from that, get an update on committee vacancies and processes to fill our group. We'll have a 6-month review, really reflecting on where we've been, where we're going, where we are in this current moment. And then we're going to really continue the conversation that we've had over the life of this group, but building on the work that we did at our last meeting and then recentering in on a couple of the topic areas that we didn't come to consensus and approval for recommendations and goals at our last meeting. And then we'll close and hopefully do some celebrating and talk about next steps and leave at 6 p.m. Any questions on the agenda for today? Awesome. Matt, do you want to lead us into the meeting summary approval?
Sure. Pretty straightforward. I did not have any changes or corrections or anything like that, so I would move approval of the meeting summary.
Thank you. I guess you made a motion. Can we get a second?
Second.
Any edits or conversation necessary for the meeting summary? Not seeing any. All those in favor, a thumbs up or say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Not seeing any. February meeting summary is approved. Great, thank you. Liam, I'm passing to you. Do you want to kick us off with some framing?
Sure, why not? Thank you, Ben. Liam Frost, Assistant Director of the Metro Housing Department. It's good to see everybody today. I want to start with a few updates, but before we get to the updates, I just want to recognize and acknowledge that over the last month, a lot of folks around this table, a lot of folks on the call, and the people that you work with responded to some pretty significant severe weather across the region. And I think it's just worth acknowledging these can be extremely stressful times. A lot of the regular work, as hard as it is, gets put off, and it becomes even more difficult when it's done. But even during those times, it's very stressful and even traumatic when you volunteer in those places too and help our neighbors outside survive that weather. So I just want to acknowledge that and thank everybody who volunteered their time to respond to that weather. With regard to vacancies, we've come to a conclusion with Washington County to move forward on the replacement for James Schroeder's seat. We're very excited about it. We will have that person set in April's meeting. I know in the last meeting I committed to having somebody here. It took a little while longer than promised. I apologize for that, but we will have that person and we'll make the announcement in the next couple of weeks by email. So thanks for your patience. We're also, as a department, developing a recruitment process, not only for the Tri-County Planning Body, but also for the Supportive Housing Services Oversight Committee and the Affordable Housing Bond Oversight Committee as well. It feels redundant for us to design and recruit every so often for each of the committees, so we're streamlining that, and we are in the final stages of approving it. And then the last piece around vacancies is that I want to give a very warm welcome to Chair Tootie Smith from Clackamas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're very excited to have you. You're one of our 3 official elected officials representing. Thanks for waving. I'm happy to open the floor up to you, Chair Smith, if you just wanted to say a few words.
Thank you for your kind request. I don't need to say anything right now. I'm just going to wait and listen, and I did read all the materials from the last couple of meetings, and thank you very much.
Wonderful. Excited to have you here. The last part of my update, and then I'll hand it over to my colleague, Valeria McWilliams.
We're going to go to public comment first.
No, she has more updates.
I know, we're going to come back to that.
Sure. Back to what?
Public comment.
Oh.
You skipped ahead. I was asking you
No,
some inspirational opening. That's okay.
I see.
But that was a good update, and bringing Chair
Okay.
Smith into the room was great.
Okay.
Are you good?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. I was looking for inspiration, but I'm glad we welcomed.
Can I try to provide some?
Yeah, jump in.
So she doesn't know I'm going to say this, but I would like to also say welcome to Chair Smith. I'm glad you're here. I have had the opportunity to work more closely with Chair Smith as she has been the Clackamas County Chair for over a couple of years now. And I have learned a whole bunch about what makes Clackamas County unique, particularly in comparison to Washington County, but also I have learned of her dedication to serving her community, and that includes addressing homelessness as well. So I just thought I'd share that with the group. While this may be one of the first of our monthly meetings that she is attending, or at least in a little bit, she and I have continued our conversations about this homeless work together. And I just wanted to share that with you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair Harrington. You were very kind with your comments.
I appreciate it. I appreciate the love in the room. I'm going to open us up for public comment. I think that was a nice welcome and entrance to the space, Chair. Let's open it up for public comment. I think was Melanie, we had a hand earlier. So we got 2 folks for public comment. If we can promote Melanie, and then it looks like Commissioner West. So if you could take about 3 minutes for public comment. It's not a space for deliberation of the group, but certainly the group will has the opportunity to incorporate your comments into its discussion and dialogue. So Melanie, do we have you up?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you. Jump in, please.
Great, thank you. Thank you. I'm joining you today to introduce my program. My name is Melanie Calvin, and I founded the Assist program in 2010. And I've been an advocate for people with severe disabilities and that are homeless for 19 years. We navigate the extremely complicated federal disability benefits application process. And we address this homeless crisis every day in our work. We've been working with who you call Population A for almost 13 years now. Chronically homeless people with disabilities are talked about throughout the Metro SHS measure. Our regional work in all 3 counties fits squarely into the wraparound homeless services described in the measure. I started a very similar team of disability advocates at Central City Concern in 2008. That team's name is the BEST team. Both our teams serve people who are severely disabled and cannot navigate the months to years long technical application process without help, such as people suffering from severe mental illness. We get referrals from a great number of human service agencies and organizations, medical facilities, and homeless shelters, and we always have a wait list. Our small but high impact team of 7 carries a regional caseload of about 120 clients at one time, and we've served almost 1,000 clients. Over the past 12 years, we've brought in over $46 million in federal funds that support housing stability and health improvement. These funds help with everything from rent to utilities to food to medications to transportation and more. Please note that our attached budget I have submitted this document in writing, so it will get there. Our budget is less than $500,000. People who are receiving RLRA vouchers, who we help become eligible for disability benefits, means that they get to start paying their rent when they get these benefits approved. Benefits can be a direct offset to the costs of these vouchers. And I wanted to let people know that when we get people on disability, there's a whole lot more to it than just the disability income. They're eligible for Medicare and Medicaid, and they're eligible for all the disability services that the counties provide. We intersect with all the human services out there. I am hoping to partner with the regional committee here to expand this service for not just my team, but perhaps the other team that does this work at Central City Concern. And I would love to invite any of you to learn more about our program. Thank you so much. One more point though is I think that in the priorities that you guys have outlined, that there is some good crossover on the healthcare systems, because this is a gap in services. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. And we'll note that your written comment was also shared with the body. Can we ask Commissioner West? Yeah. So we got you.
How about technology? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Ben West, Clackamas County Commissioner, and I am new to the commission. I'm the newest member. This has been, I know, a focus of Clackamas County to address this issue head on, and I'm excited to collaborate with the rest of you when that opportunity comes up. And under the leadership of Chair Smith, I know that we want to address these issues that contribute to chronic and persistent homelessness and addiction and mental health issues within our community. And so I am just my first meeting with you guys are sitting in and watching. And so I look forward to getting caught up to what you guys are doing and then hopefully being a productive person in the community trying to help solve these issues. So thank you for what you guys are doing. And I look forward to being in the meeting with you guys.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner, and appreciate your attentiveness and participation today. I'll do a last call for public comment, Mercedes. And as Mercedes is talking, I'll do a last call for public comment. If you're in the audience, please raise your hand or press *9 if you're on the phone to raise your hand if you'd like to offer public comment.
I was hoping to make a recommendation that the information that was shared about the benefits attainment work be shared with the Oversight Committee, because I think part of that is a question of whether or not that is allowable services, which I think is better for that committee to handle. As a former employee of Central City Concern, we did find that there wasn't like a call for application that allowed for that body of work. Multnomah County actually made a one-time investment to maintain the services in that program. As far as I know, they may still be at risk. And so I think it'd be good for the other oversight committee who looks more at the programming per county to consider whether or not that's an allowable use of funds to encourage the counties to open up allocations for that.
Great, thanks. I guess I have a procedural ask, so we could just share it. Do folks need to vote on that, or is that just a process request? Do I need to vote on sharing information, right?
I can take that, Ben.
Please.
Metro staff would be more than happy to share that information with the Oversight Committee staff, and they can take it from there. Thanks.
Thank you, Mercedes, for that recommendation. Last call for public comment. You're not seeing any? Okay, great. So let's go back. Liam teed up some staff updates, and then there was the other portion of that. Liam, I'll pass it to you and Claria.
How kind and gracious of you, Ben. Thank you. I had one update, and then I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Valeria. We're going to be hiring soon to support our Tri-County planning body work. It's going to be an associate policy coordinator position. Valeria is going to talk later on about how this work is going to change for both Metro staff and county staff as we move into doing and planning ahead. And so we're excited to bring on somebody new. My favor to ask of all of you is once we send out the recruitment to you all, you send it out to your network so we have a really large pool to choose from across the region. Valeria.
Thanks, Liam. So before I head into updates, I just want to acknowledge that today is International Women's Day. So I hope that everyone's taking a moment to reflect on women's history as well as our past and present struggles, overcomings, and achievements. So just wanted to share that. Okay, to staff updates. So survey results. So after the last meeting, staff sent an optional survey to the committee. And this survey is really to support in providing space where folks can take a bit more time to digest the discussion and the information provided during the meeting. And so considering that this was an optional survey, we actually got a really good turnout. We got a 46 response rate. The feedback we received around goal, language, and recommendation, that was all considered in the options that we're presenting today for the last two areas of work around training and technical assistance, as well as employee retention and recruitment and retention. Staff were also pleased to know that most folks feel like the meetings are going well, that there is a balance of perspectives and opportunities to contribute, as well as they are feeling heard. We also heard that the materials that we have been providing for the meeting so far have been enough for folks to feel prepared to engage in making decisions at the meetings. There were a couple areas that were raised on how we could improve. One was around more clarity on how public comment is being considered in this committee, and staff will follow up on that. And also there was issue raised on around that this committee may not be making progress as fast as it should. So we're taking that into consideration and we'll be following up more on those. Lastly, meeting attendance. I just wanted to remind everyone that it's important for you to confirm if you're unable to make it to the meeting, at least a week in advance. We do need to meet quorum for every meeting where decisions are happening. So, and also it's as important if you could let us know if you're coming in person to attend the meeting so staff can plan accordingly. So that's it for staff updates.
Any questions or comments on the staff updates? Okay, not seeing any. I think we're sticking with you, Liam, with the 6-month review.
Brilliant. Am I on? Nope. There we go. Thank you, Ben. If you could start the slides, please, just to help ground us in this look back that we're taking right now. So as most of you are around this table and online know, this whole committee has been an unprecedented effort. We're building as we go, and I just want to thank you all for taking a big leap of faith with us every month as staff lead the work in getting to where we want to get to, which is namely identifying areas that can provide more value to address homelessness across the region. And where we started was a bunch of people with multiple different perspectives and backgrounds, and we had a whole pile of ideas, but even before that, we had the counties show up and say, here are our main challenges. And we took our time, and it was tough because this table was convened last summer, and there was a lot of appetite and enthusiasm to get to work as soon as possible. And so I was grateful that you were all able to take in what the county staff had to say about the initial challenges of the first year of SHS implementation. And then, like I say, you brought a lot of different concepts, a lot of different ideas to bear. And so we had to figure out a way to move through that and refine and process and refine and go back and forth with you. Today will hopefully represent the finalization of that phase of the process where you all have agreed on some high goal language and some commensurate recommendations or associate recommendations so that we can move forward with this work. I think because we spent a lot of time going through substance and ideas, it's easy to forget the core responsibility of this group, and that is to look at the systems and identify opportunities where we can bind some of those systems, where we can coordinate some of those systems so that we're providing that synergy across the region and in these systems themselves. I think it's easy to go deeper, especially when we have people on this committee with expertise, and some people on this committee don't have the same expertise. And so we have to kind of straddle that line, as it were, and we've tried to do that as staff over the last few months, and I think, more or less we've been largely successful. There will be opportunity to go deeper in the coming months, in maybe some smaller groups, and Valeria can talk about that in a minute. All of which is to say the most exciting part is ahead of us, I think. And so over the last 6 months, we launched that committee. Well, we launched the committee last summer, but we launched the business meetings last September, which was the month that I joined Metro. So I'm with you along at the same time here. The other charge that this body has is developing the regional plan. That was part of the ballot measure language, it's part of the work plan language, it's part of the charter. As we mentioned early on, and I think it was my boss, Patricia Rojas, who introduced the concept of building this regional plan iteratively, and it was presented by the co-chairs at the time. And what we're trying to do is build as we go. So we're not waiting to do the work. It was a big call early on not to develop a plan over the course of a year or so and then do the work, but rather build as we go. So again, thank you for that leap of faith. And the goal language that we hopefully are all going to finalize today will be an achievement. It'll represent the completion of that task, or the first iterative part of that task. The Idea Bank is a place that will continue to live. We will return to it as needed. And I think as we develop some of the strategies around the goals, you'll see some of those ideas pop up from the Idea Bank where they can fit in. And we'll be very explicit about how we are going to do that when we return to you and update you. I've said a lot about the regional coordination goals, so we can move on to the next slide. This is just to return to the process flow as we proposed it, I think back in October, actually. And at the time, this was the way in which we were going to go about the iterative process, understanding that this would be tweaked over time, it would change. You can see here that highlighted in green, this is the phase that we remain in. I think a lot of folks around this table expected to get to some final recommendations a lot sooner than we have. I think what we've discovered is there needs to be more due diligence, more thought and intentionality, especially because you all have decided to land on, at the moment, 5 goals. Which makes it quite a spectrum of bodies of work that we have to engage in with the county staff, and different types of work too. At the end of the day, though, we are still following this track, and we will try to continue to follow this track. I think when we get to July, we'll take a look back and we'll survey you all about how this process has worked out so far, and we'll continue that improvement as we move along. I think that's my part of the presentation done in terms of the 6-month look back. I would ask you if you had any comments of the past 6 months, if you wanted to provide any input right now, but we can move along in the agenda if you don't.
Let's open it up. Any reflections? Thank you, Liam. Folks are just sitting in the space of reflection.
I feel comfortable.
Yeah. Chair Harrington, please.
I just thought I'd contribute that I'm really pleased with what we have set out for. I just hope that we've given our staff the time to do the work at the same time that this committee continues further iteration and ideas. From my standpoint, I feel like we've really maxed out our staff on the SHS program. And now we're challenged to participate in the governor's executive orders, and our staff is very busy working on the MACG group. And there are only so many of them on our team, and I don't want to wear them out. That's all. So I'm just worried for them. That's all.
I don't know if you can see your team. Jess has a big smile and some love being passed for that mention, Chair Harrington.
I don't think it's only Jess. I just want to really appreciate what you said, Chair Harrington, especially as an elected official. It means a lot to staff. It's nice to be seen as staff. I'm sure I can speak for Clackamas and Multnomah counties as well. We do have a lot of work ahead of us together, and the work is going to change, and that means continued coordination, and I feel pretty proud of the way that we've all coordinated so far. It doesn't mean to say that it's been easy, and it doesn't mean to say that it's going to be easy, but the faith that we have in each other has been great, and I understand that Chair Smith has her hand up right now too.
Thank you, Liam. I agree 100% with Chair Harrington on this. All of our staffs are maxed out, and we need to hire more. We're trying to hire more. With the governor's emergency executive order at Clackamas County anyway, we've had to dedicate an entire staff person just to meeting her requirements. And it is tiresome. A little bit later on in some of the agendas, I'm going to ask some questions regarding the governor's executive orders and possibly offer up an idea. Not that this group may consider it, but we all are suffering in these challenges. I know the group has wanted to progress faster than they have, but I've noticing that in all program development, even with the programs that are tried and true, just getting some policy initiatives passed. It's slow and it's difficult. So, don't criticize yourselves too much on that. Thank you very much.
Appreciate that, Chair.
Thank you, Chair Smith. Really appreciate that. I think it is slow and difficult, and also people are moving as fast as they can. We're in interesting times. Valeria, if you want to talk about what's coming up next for this group.
Thanks, Liam. Yes, so what is next in store? So work planning, as Liam mentioned just a little bit ago, staff have already been working to move some of the work forward from the approved areas of work from the last meeting. We'll continue to work with county staff to design multiple work plans for the multiple bodies of work. And like Liam mentioned, so far it's 5 approved bodies of work and could potentially be 7 after today. So we'll be busy working on that. So TCPB meetings, also building off of what Liam said, we're now entering a different phase where, again, Metro staff and counties are going to be operationalizing some of this work. So according to the charter, this committee needs to continue to meet monthly until July. However, we're expecting that these future meetings will be structured a little bit different that they have been in the last 6 months based on where we are right now in the process. So we will be working with your co-chairs and your facilitation team to bring back a proposal for your next meeting. Regional plan development, again, as Liam mentioned, we'll continue to develop the regional plan, we are going to be working on starting to draft an outline for the regional plan and adding the recommendations that you've approved so far as a placeholder of where the areas of work will be expanded over time. So we also hope to present this outline in one of your future meetings. And last but not least, the Oversight Committee. So some of you may be following the Oversight Committee meetings, and some of you are actually members of the Oversight Committee. We wanted to make sure we keep you updated on any conversations that the committee may be having that are relevant to this committee. So in the last couple of months, the Oversight Committee has been reviewing the county's annual reports. And based on that, they have been developing some recommendations as part of the regional report that the committee will be presenting both to Metro Council and the Board of Commissioners of each county. That presentation is going to be happening in April. Some of those recommendations are of regional nature, so we will be sharing with you the regional report once it's final, and we'll be coming back here to actually discuss them. And that's it for me. Ben?
Is there more slides on this?
That's it.
Okay, so we're gonna move into the next section, which is really building off. Isn't there a place for Matt's piece? Do we have a slide for that?
It's coming up.
The next one.
Okay, can we go? There we are. So we're going to tee up this conversation, Matt. I'll come to you in a minute, but just want to remind us and set the tone for kind of the way we're going to spend the rest of our meeting. So you all at our last meeting did the great work of moving through and approving goal language and recommendations around coordinated entry, the landlord recruitment, and the healthcare system alignment, right? Building again, part of that journey and story we've been on, starting with those utmost challenges, discussion, refinement to get to a place of agreement. There's two elements today that we necessarily need to dive more deeply into. Training and technical assistance, which we had a robust conversation, and you all contributed additional details in the survey to help, Metro staff then come forward with some revised language that we can review and hopefully get to agreement on today. And then employee recruitment and retention, a broad bucket, incredibly complex as our conversations have reflected over the last, several months together. So we'll be coming back to that. If we want to go to or this is where we're stopping, right? All right, so I do want to, pass it to Matt. I think this, what am I passing?
We'll do it next, don't worry.
Okay, is there anything else I want to say about this?
No, you're good.
No, I'm good. All right, let's go.
Thanks for your expert facilitation, Ben. So the slide that you see before you are the 5 goal areas that we proposed in response to all of your input at the last meeting. As you'll see, the 3 unbolded are the ones that you voted on last month, and the 2 of the remaining that, as Ben mentioned, will be discussed today and hopefully approved. Or some language approved today. And so what we're going to do right now is go through the first 3. We're going to remind you of the language. We're just going to read that out loud. We're going to hand it over to Valeria to talk about coordinated entry. I'll take the regional landlord recruitment piece. And as Ben alluded to, Matt wants to make a suggestion, and we'll hand it over to Matt in a minute. But we're going to go through coordinated entry first.
Thanks, Sam. So just a reminder for coordinated entry, the goal that you all agreed on is coordinated entry is more accessible, equitable, and efficient for staff and clients with the following 3 recommendations. Map the unique challenges and successes of each of the 3 coordinated entry systems. Number 2, assess opportunities to create connectivity among the 3 coordinated entry systems to improve equitable access and work towards regionalizing some tools within coordinated entry. And 3rd, explore opportunities for co-enrollment with other systems. The next one is regional landlord recruitment.
So I'm going to read this out, and then we're going to pass it over to Matt. So the goal for the regional landlord recruitment, as you, I guess, collectively agree upon, is to increase the availability of readily accessible and appropriate housing units for service providers. Now, remember, the goal language is intended to be a destination for us. It's where we want to end up. And that's the kind of guidance that Metro staff and county staff need to hear from you. The recommendations associated with this have also been proposed by county staff and Metro staff. There was I was going to use the word concomitant, but I'll take that back in this accent. There was also an associated memo that we prepared for you all in response to direction back in December, if you recall. I'll read out the recommendation language right now. So recommendation number 1 is to contract with a qualified consultant to identify areas where regionalization can support existing and future county efforts and submit recommendations. I'm happy to report that our team has been in conversations with the potential consultant over the last couple of weeks to go back and forth on a potential scope. We've also been talking about the coordinated entry piece too. So I just want to reassure you that after you approved this language last month, we went to work to engage and begin that work. So again, as a reminder, with the remaining 2 goals that are up for debate today, we're not going to move forward until you approve that goal language and the recommendations associated with it. The second recommendation here is to develop a regional communications campaign to recruit new landlords, including specific outreach and engagement to culturally specific media and BIPOC community groups. We began something of a discussion at our Tri-County communications meeting this past Monday afternoon. We're scoping it out. Multnomah County already engaged in a communications recruitment campaign last year under the name Move in Multnomah, and Multnomah County's representative provided some feedback about how that went on Monday, and so we will continue to move that along.
Now it's to me. Thank you, Liam. We're really dialed in. So I wanted to provide some space for Matt, and I hope that folks, if we can pass some detail out, but just did want to pass it off to you, Matt. I mean, I think there was a request for a revised recommendation. We wanted to create a little bit of space for conversation amongst this group. So Matt, I'm going to ask you to kind of lead the way in terms of describing what your thinking is, and then really open it up to the group to see if we want to revisit the recommendation that you previously approved to move forward in a slightly different direction. Matt?
Sure. Well, thanks much. So really, if we go back and think for just a moment about one of the things that Liam reported on earlier, and he was quite right, is that when we first started setting up our process leading to a regional plan, what we decided to do, and I do recall the same, Patricia, I think, kind of led the charge on that, is that what we would do is do it kind of iteratively, that we would pick certain topics, and those topics would be ones that we would dive into so that we could both, as Liam put it, begin the work, but also, create a piece of the puzzle. With respect to landlord recruitment and related functions there, my thought as I was reading through this stuff is I think we're at the point where we can move to that next step, because the memo that was done in December provided very good oversight, listed the issues, they talked to a couple providers, potential providers, and reached what I thought was a very nice job of putting together what this would be all about. The other thing that I believe is where we are is that we are at a stage, and this is what led to the draft resolution, which I think is in the chat as well as being passed out to the people who are here in person, that we would direct Metro staff to engage in a contract negotiation with a qualified provider and bring back to us what they think that could look like. Now, that's a little different than the consultant for scope and things like that. And I think that's appropriate because I think the scope and the issues have already pretty much been done and such. Now, it gets to be kind of interesting when you look at where that fits in the time frame. And I'm one of those who is urging that we move as quickly as we can. I know everybody wants to do that. And I'm looking at ways that we can accelerate our progress. I think this is one of them. For example, where we are now, there are different efforts going on in each county. And if there were a broad contract through Metro as the regional entity, but not Metro as the one doing the actual recruiting or anything like that, a third party would do that, then each county would have the opportunity to join into that contract, which would get interesting because Multnomah County is, I believe, beginning the process for negotiating itself. So maybe it's the same contract or something, and I have every confidence that the Multnomah County staff and Metro staff can work through that. But then that would become available. And the key in the second part of the resolution is that we, as Tri-County Planning Body, have particular responsibilities for the Regional Investment Fund. And if a county decides to join in with whatever this contract turns out to be for a qualified provider, then we would be giving permission to tap into the RIF as a source of payment for the, these aren't free, for the services. And realistically, I think it's likely that Multnomah County will have their contract in place before we can finish our process, but at least we will be beginning that process. The RIF is 5% of the proceeds. The proceeds have been coming in now for just a little under 2 years. That probably means that there's something like $25 million sitting in the RIF. We have not tapped it as yet. And I think we need to start the process toward tapping it because there's a lot to be learned and a lot to be set up within that process. We do our thing in a form of a recommendation. The various staff, Metro and the counties, do their thing. That comes back to us for a recommendation. That in turn goes to the Oversight Committee. That in turn would potentially, I assume, need to go back to the counties because the RIF money sits with the counties. And then and only then are we done with our process. I personally find that a bit cumbersome, to put it generously, but let's start it. And let's see how it goes. There's a lot of the idea here is to learn as we do. And so my request is that we, and the language is before you, and I have no tie to the language, if there's a better way to say it, that's fine. But I think that we should, have Metro staff begin the process to work toward a contract. And the idea would be that that would be an overview contract that counties can choose to join in on or not. They could do it now, they could do it later, if they're, it's gonna take time to get ready. I think counties are in different positions, but that would set us up to begin the process so that we can learn how we can tap into the RIF. I think it also would be something very concrete and positive. To me, this is kind of a no-brainer. I can't imagine why we wouldn't want to do something like this. And I have sensed in our conversations that there seems to me to be a very, very deep consensus on this issue. So that's what's behind all of it. And obviously Ben can facilitate the conversation, but I believe this would be an opportunity to make meaningful progress toward doing something and also learning as we go.
Good, thank you, Matt. So can I ask just a point of clarity, and then Chair Harrington will come to you. Are you proposing an additional recommendation or a replacement recommendation?
I think this one would replace the one about getting a consultant. The communication one is separate, so I would leave that as is.
Great, and the goal, I'm assuming the goal does not change.
Oh, the goal, yeah, no, I'm sorry, I should have made that clear.
Yep.
I think the goal is
Just
great.
clarifying. Okay,
No,
so let's
no
go-
issue there whatsoever.
Great, thank you. Let's go Chair Harrington, then Commissioner Jayapal.
So I heard Matt talk about a December memo, and here I sit in March, having a great deal of difficulty remembering said December memo. And I don't know if it was a memo from Matt or a memo from Metro. So that's one starting point. Then the other is this proposal that I'm reading in the chat. So we're still in this new space. I'm really comfortable with the 3 counties, and that means county staff, agreeing that they want to collaborate on a contracted service and the same service across the three. I don't know, and I'm comfortable that Metro would contract with a consultant to help inform our Tri-County staff planning team. But if I understand this, this is a space where Metro would be contracting a service, and then the counties can choose if they want to use it or not. And like I said, I don't have that memo in front of me, so I don't know if what's in this chat is in full alignment with that memo or not. So I'm at a little bit of a loss, if you can help me out.
Well, thank you, Chair. So I think your interpretation of the proposal is accurate, right? That Metro would contract with a provider and counties could opt in. And then Liam, if you could speak to kind of the content of the memo that was designed and delivered in December, and then we'll go Commissioner Jayapal and then to Jess.
Okay. Thank you, Ben, and thank you for the questions, Chair Harrington. And then I'd also like to add something to Matt's suggestion too. The memo was in response to, I think it was Steve Rudman, TCPB member, asking Metro staff to do a scan of what county staff are currently doing in terms of landlord recruitment, and then what are other jurisdictions also doing in terms of landlord recruitment for housing placement. In January's meeting, I think we received an additional request to provide recommendations in that memo. We delivered the memo, I believe, before February's meeting, so before last month's TCPB meeting in February. And then, Matt, in response to Ben's question, you had asked to replace the contracting with a qualified consultant. Just as my professional opinion, I would want to retain that qualified consultant. The proposal that you made is narrowly focused on a particular service. I want to also understand what other opportunities there might be regionally that the counties are currently engaged in, and that's why we would want to bring a consultant to understand how we can potentially bind those efforts currently. So I wouldn't want to replace that, Matt.
Yeah, no, I have no problem with that at all. And the consultant could even help you with the other process. So that's a good comment.
Great, thank you. So let's go Commissioner Jayapal, then Jess, then Christina.
Thanks, Ben. And thanks, Matt, for sort of, I think heightening the impetus behind this particular strategy. I completely agree that I think this was the reason that I put it forward at the very beginning of our ideation, that it is something that's very concrete, that's very achievable in the short term, but then will have medium and long-term impacts as well. So just want to add a little bit of context and information around what Multnomah County is doing, and then make a suggestion about how we might move forward with this. We are going to incorporate an agreement with a provider to do landlord recruitment, and we are going to look at that as part of the package that Chair Vika Peterson is putting forward, the Housing Multnomah Now package. So I think that there's an opportunity and a timing issue that we are probably handling. As you pointed out, we will probably be voting on that more quickly than the TCPB process is going to go forward. I think there are some things to think about around specifically directing Metro to enter into a contract with a provider around this service. And what I'd suggest is that maybe instead what the TCPB does, and I don't know, I haven't drafted language, we'd have to work on it, but what the TCPB does is to endorse the strategy with the view that Multnomah County can move forward, that as the TCPB goes through its process, assuming that it's approved, Multnomah County could tap its regional investment fund in order to pay for that service, and then Metro with its consultant and the other counties and Multnomah as well can look at that arrangement and incorporate the experience that we have into how we move forward in a regional fashion with the other counties. So I'm very supportive of the thrust of what you're trying to do. I'm thinking that there's some working out for Metro and the counties to do in terms of how it's actually implemented.
Great, thank you, Commissioner. Where's my notes? Who's next? Jess, yes, Jess and Christina.
Thanks for the proposal, Matt, and I appreciate the urgency and enthusiasm around this concept. I think there's been a lot of demonstrated best practice through some of the example models that we've all been exposed to. I think I want to express that it wouldn't be a quick win. This is a very complex regional system that we would be working to stand up, and I think it's important that we embark on those kinds of complex regional efforts thoughtfully. And each county brings their own unique context. I can just speak for Washington County and say that this would mean significant changes in each of the 22 contracts we hold with our housing providers and the roles that the trained housing navigators are contracted to provide. It would also mean significant changes in our housing liaison program, our landlord liaison program that we are just standing up and launching. These aren't changes that shouldn't happen. I think it's just, I want to reflect that it would be significant work in our own county to modify programming that's recently been stood up to align with a regional system. And so for that reason, I think the counties have helped to create this recommended strategy so we can plot the course forward thoughtfully and not intentionally harm any of the programmatic work that we are right now standing up and trying to implement as we're housing people.
Great. Thank you, Jess. So let's go Christina and then Chair Smith.
I'd like to add to the recommendation on the second bulleted point to develop a regional communication campaign to recruit new landlords. One side of me thinks it should be separated between landlords and BIPOC community groups, because when doing the outreach, for example, there is a huge difference in terms of how equitable the strategies are to outreach to property owners, especially BIPOC property owners, pop and mom owners, where they have fewer units or houses, or sometimes they have they're not as wealthy as big affordable housing providers. So yes, I get the intention of reaching out to BIPOC groups to engage them in a cultural specific way to get into this recruitment program. I suggest we add additional things or we separate them, because for the way that I see it working is we need to give BIPOC community groups more education and support to apply for opportunities like this and remove many barriers. I've been a community organizing for 14 years, and for 8 years, I did building organizing where I offered landlords programs so they could keep their housing in good condition and lower the rents, etc. But they either didn't have the time or the resources, or they couldn't, it was too much of a financial burden for them to participate. So it's about breaking the barriers for BIPOC community groups and smaller owners. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Christina. Chair Smith?
Thank you. I do appreciate the conversation on landlords. However, in Clackamas County, I don't know that we have the abundance of housing, either apartments or hotels, that maybe the other counties do. That's just an observation, but I don't know that. What is the incentive for a landlord, for instance, to rent an apartment when he is or she is, the vacancy rates aren't that high? Is this permissive? Is it going to turn into something that's not permissive on our landlords? And then my final observation is, who's the service provider in this? If Metro's gonna go out and do this program, I thought the counties were the service provider. Just some questions. And I'm learning along the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Smith. Let's go back to, we haven't heard from you, Mercedes. I'm going to go Mercedes, then Matt, then Commissioner Jayapal.
Thank you. So, Matt, maybe you can help me with this, but I'm looking through the memo and I don't see a reference to a landlord database service. And so, and I'm not clear what that is.
Oh, well, it's the recruitment process. One of the service providers that that I think Metro's looking at and that the memo referenced actually works through, I think it's the Zillow database. So being kind of a database guy, I may have picked up the wrong terminology, but it's the landlord recruitment process, which inherently means that you have to come up with a database of the landlords once they sign on and all that. So it's a component. It was not intended to be something different than the process.
Okay, that's helpful. And so then getting that clarification, I do think that I think that when we're making recommendations here for regional things, if we start with things that are opt-in or opt-out, then we're not really doing it regionally. And then given that counties are in different places, I think I tend to agree that the consultant work is needed first to create a baseline and to identify the shared needs that everyone would opt into. Because I would be worried if we set a precedent that like some of the regional things you can pick and choose from, when I think what we want to be putting out there are things that we've already got the collective buy-in and the consensus, and everyone is going to participate and move forward.
Thank you. I keep losing it. So is it Commissioner Jayapal and then Matt, or Matt and then Commissioner Jayapal?
I'll defer to Commissioner.
I was just going to maybe answer a couple of the questions. Chair Smith, thank you for those questions. And maybe it'd be helpful to talk about the provider that Multnomah County is considering, for example, or the service that Multnomah County is considering. It would be a service that works to recruit landlords, potentially manages some set of incentives to address your point about, what is it that's going to recruit landlords? It would be voluntary. There's no question of requiring landlords to provide their units, but rather to recruit them and then work with them on kind of lowering barriers and doing all of the other things that would be required in order to be able to use those units. So, it wouldn't necessarily replace work that's being done by other providers. We've got homeless service providers who themselves have landlord recruitment efforts. So we see this as additive rather than supplementing work that's already happening. So hopefully that helps a little bit just in terms of what's the kind of program that we're talking about here. Thank you.
Good, thanks. So let's go Matt, then Vahid, then Yesenia.
Sure. Well, just to respond to a couple of things. First, I greatly appreciate the feedback and the very thoughtful comments that have been made. Part of my goal here was to advance this conversation, and I think everybody's comments have been very constructive in that direction. What I would offer is this. Everything, all of these different programs and efforts and so forth are in a direction. What I'm trying to do is to provide a structure that is, or propose that we have a structure that is a regional structure that the different counties can work toward or not. The decisions are at the county level as to what they do. And so the efforts that are underway in the counties right now, if there is an overview of a regional structure, I think the best way to make that practical is to actually come up with a proposal and a provider so that there's something concrete rather than a series of recommendations. We're 6 months into this, as Liam pointed out, and I think we need to get to the point where we've got something that is actually concrete. Either we will be, the counties will be working toward a regional plan, or they will be working toward individual plans. I think this is one of those issues that is clearly at a very fundamental level. Many of the aspects are inherently regional. So I want us to have a regional plan that is operating so that the counties that wish to do so can have efforts that line up toward that. That doesn't mean, and as Commissioner Jayapal just pointed out, and I think it's inherent in what Jess said as well, is that many of the service providers have their own processes. Terrific. Let's get additional ones. I don't think anybody is saying that we are anywhere near where we need to be in the number of landlords who are recruited. It's a tough bit. I forgot who it was that pointed out that it's a hard decision for a landlord whether she or he is going to wind up being willing to do this, and there's a series of incentives that have been shown to work in many other circumstances. We should bring that expertise and that provider. Similarly, the right kind of provider can also focus in on the particular needs of BIPOC and other culturally sensitive areas and all of that type of stuff that is so critically important. So again, I appreciate the feedback. I worry greatly that if we don't do something, we are going to have three very different systems. That is not the goal that I think we should be, or the pattern that we should be going toward. I think we need to work toward and have a structure that facilitates and encourages regional action.
All right, thank you, Matt. So I know we have Vahid and Yesenia. So I want to open to you two, and then I want to, Jess, all right, let's go Vahid and then Yesenia, and then we'll try to chart a path forward.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. I mean, my comments are somewhat similar to what Jess said, but just wanted to share that we also in Clackamas County have a landlord liaison and recruitment program. We have developed local incentives with a landlord partnership agreement that our landlord liaison is reaching out to landlords with those incentives and encouraging landlords to sign up and identify units and make them available to folks that are being served in our housing programs. And I understand the recommendation that is on the screen now, the one related to the consultant work, to really help us identify what's working and what the three counties are doing to implement the regional long-term rent assistance program. It's a regional framework, but it's implemented and managed at the county level by our housing authorities. And I think we've all stayed abreast of one another in the regional long-term rent assistance work group about how we're implementing the incentives. And I think there are potentially opportunities, to speak to Matt's point, to see where other things can be regionalized or made more standard across the region, so that in our outreach to landlords, we're kind of saying the same thing potentially and offering a similar suite of incentives. But I did want to say, just echoing what Jess said, that is work that in Clackamas County is underway. There are active recruitment efforts by staff to offer incentives to landlords and enroll them in the regional long-term rent assistance program as partners with incentives. And so I'd want to sort of caution us that if we're going to do an additional outreach to landlords effort, we need to be also coordinated on the local level, locally, so that we don't, have a bunch of folks calling the same landlords asking, hey, would you sign up to this program?
Great, thank you, Vahid. Yesenia?
Yeah, thank you. I think Vahid and I are pretty similar wavelengths here, and Commissioner Jayapal already spoke so eloquently about the work that is underway in Multnomah County and that we're considering. And I think for me, it's been really helpful to learn from my colleagues in the two other counties around the work that they're doing. So for me, I get really excited about this first recommendation of bringing on a consultant to come on and help us really facilitate and encourage those regional efforts, and where there's an opportunity to augment what we're already doing in each of those counties, in each of our counties, to further engage with landlord recruitment and retention. And I think that there's also, as we start to think about contracting out and the amount of money, I think that there's also something to be said around funding, the funding source that would come from. And if we want to take a look at all the different options before we start spending down some of those funds, the regional funds that we have access to.
Great, thank you, Yesenia. All right, I'm going to try to bring us back. Can we take this down? I'd like to see people if that's possible, but I'm going to look over at you, Commissioner Jayapal. I didn't know if you introduced a potential endorsement of a strategy, right? So I'm trying to figure out, like, how do we move forward, right? I think we've heard kind of the potential opportunities. We've heard some of the causes for concern and challenge. Our charter is modified consensus, ultimately majority vote. But before we go to that place, I don't know if Commissioner Jayapal, if you've thought any more about language, so I'll put you on the spot intentionally.
You have put me on the spot. I have not drafted language. But, you know, a couple things, I guess. Vahid, you know, I think county staff have really well articulated where we are now and all of the different efforts that are happening. I do think that in the long term for this particular strategy, again, not thinking of it as a replacement for other things, but to have a structure that actually, Vahid, I think goes to your point about we don't, in the long run, want a whole bunch of different people calling the same landlords, right? So at some point, having some sort of regionalization and centralization, I think is going to be helpful. I do think that taking the time to figure out, to have a consultant look at this and say, yes, this is one of the ways in which making this a regional strategy is going to be helpful, that will give us the base from which to move. So I don't have language. I'm happy to go noodle on it and send something around, but it's something around, again, endorsing, you know, still sticking with hiring the consultant and having them do that work, and then endorsing that we believe that this should be a regional strategy, but that we haven't quite figured out, we're going to do the work to figure out how to get there. And by endorsing that it should be a regional strategy, I think it allows, I'm speaking selfishly for Multnomah County, it would allow Multnomah County, if we choose to do so, to tap into that regional investment fund and to serve as the pilot project that the consultant and everybody else could look at and see how it goes. So that's my concept, but no, I do not have exact language for you.
That's okay. I mean, can I ask just a really quick follow-up? So I want, because I don't know if that's a new recommendation or if that's more about the goal language, and I want to make sure, you know, y'all did a lot of work to get to the initial goal and recommendation that you approved, and I just want to make sure we're not, like, does that goal speak to what you just described? Is that clear enough that says, you know, when we talk about readily accessible, appropriate housing units, you know, we're talking about a regional commitment to that concept, or am I missing that?
No, I think the goal still speaks to it.
Okay.
And the recommendation, if the group chooses to endorse it, is sort of a more specific recommendation around a centralized option or a centralized function or something like that. But I think the goal is still the right goal.
Okay. Matt, I'll ask one more time, and then I'm going to try to move us on. We got a lot to cover.
I think the consensus is clear, and so I withdraw the recommendation or the motion or whatever it was. I think that's unfortunate. I worry greatly that we are now reinforcing individual approaches rather than moving toward a regional approach. But we operate by consensus, by majority rule, and all that, and I'm in a minority on that view apparently. So that's fine. The consultant is already in the recommendations, and I believe Liam is saying that they already have identified somebody, and I guess that is the path that the group wishes to take, and I will support what the group does. So I think you can move on to the next topic.
Well, thank you for that, Matt. Let's go, Jess, and then I think we can revisit this, right? So I think we've agreed that the goal and recommendation as it is, you all have already confirmed action can move forward. Patricia, I'm going to come to you as well, but it doesn't mean that we can't revisit this topic. And I think, you know, to your point, Commissioner Jayapal, there might be some additional language and there might be other paths forward emerging from that consultant work. Jess, and then Patricia, and then I'm going to try to get us to the other work we have in front of us.
Ben, we'll try to help you move on, and I'll try to keep my comments brief. I want to bring some hope back into our regional work for Matt, because we are doing regional work. We have a regional long-term rent assistance voucher that we have created together and is being implemented in each unique county, but consistently for every user of that voucher. We've since created a regional risk mitigation fund for all landlords partnering with us through the Regional Long-Term Rent Assistance Program to have access to these risk mitigation funds as a insurance protection. It is a consistent program for all landlords across the region, but it is a contract uniquely held between the service provider and each county. So I think that there are multiple ways we can get to regionally coordinated work, and it doesn't necessarily have to start with a contract held by Metro. Maybe we build upon the wonderful work that Multnomah County is doing, and Clackamas County and Washington County join into that over time. And that still is regional work that we can celebrate and build momentum towards through this tri-county planning body. So I hope that offers a little bit of hope back into the intentions you brought forward tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Jess. Patricia, you're out there somewhere.
I actually lowered my hand. Thank you.
Oh, you lowered your hand. Okay. Well, thank you, Liam.
Thank you, Ben. Two things. One, as we know, no idea at the TCPB is ever truly dead. This will continue to live in the idea bank and will be active and can be activated should the TCPB want to revisit it. Sounds like, I don't want to take anybody's words out of their mouths, but it sounds like we would want to do that given Commissioner Jayapal's language. Secondly, if there is a question or concern around whether this goal for landlord recruitment is regional or not, we can very easily add regional language to the goal language. To Jess's point, Yesenia and Vahid's, all representing the three counties, there is opportunity here and desire to regionalize some of this work where appropriate. So that would be one way of clarifying to ensure that Commissioner Jayapal's tenor and Matt's language earlier could be reflected in the overall goal.
Right, thank you, Liam. So I'm gonna move us on with one last comment. So Christina, I want to hold what you brought forward, and I at the risk of trying not to open up this conversation any further on this topic. I think when that communication strategy begins to unfold, I think that distinction that you reflected between the type of communications that are necessary for landlord outreach and recruitment, including BIPOC landlords and BIPOC community-based organizations, you were trying to draw some distinction there. And I think we can come back to that when we actually start hearing about what that strategy looks like, and let's not lose that concept. So I didn't want to lose that in the space, but I do want to try to move us into the next part of our agenda. Are folks good to go? All right, we're a little behind where I hoped we'd be, but that was a great conversation. And Matt, I appreciate your efforts to continue to push this group, and I appreciate just the honesty and candor of the conversation. We will revisit, as Liam said. So I want to move us into the first of the two.
Sorry, Ben, just really quick on the healthcare system alignment. I won't read the goals and the recommendation that we provided in the meeting packet, but I just wanted to share an update that Metro and County staff will be hosting a healthcare system stakeholder table, including folks from HealthShare and the Oregon Health Authority by the end of the month or early April, so we can start moving with the work on the recommendation you provided. I see your Mercedes.
Oh, Mercedes, yes.
I understand we weren't planning to talk about this very much, but I do also want to make sure that we're not, like, the Medicaid waiver is, a series of new services that will become available, but I think what's missing today is people having access to healthcare services, right? We have a lot of people living in housing who aren't accessing healthcare. We have a lot of people who are attempting to access healthcare and don't have housing, and I think that's the crux of the integration that's really missing today. The waiver and aligning with that, of course, would also be a great outcome.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We'll add that then to the topics to talk with them.
Okay.
Okay.
Are you gonna put that down? Thank you. So moving into, we have two topics that I'm going to try to move us through. I'm going to channel, I think you said, swing for the fences, Chair Harrington, last time. So we're at 5:20, and we're going to try to move our way through a couple pieces. And I want to reflect just a little bit on process, and then I'm going to try to outline kind of the choices in front of us to see if we can get to a vote and approval of recommendations and goal language for the training and employee recruitment and retention. So just as as a reminder of process, right? We had some initial goal language, we have discussions, we raised complexities. Staff went back and really tried to be, I won't opine on their quality, I will say that they really attempted, and what you see in front of you is responsive, an attempt to be responsive to both the conversations that we had, to contributions in the survey, from the discussions, et cetera. So as we think about training, and again, maybe I'll also say that what I'm hoping we can do today is agree in principle and concept. Hopefully we feel aligned on language, and that we recognize that this is about initiation, right? We want to agree on where we're trying to go, and we want to recognize that we can at least start initiating those first steps. So I think that the conversation we just had was quite illuminating in terms of what might be a future necessary action, and yet we still recognize that we have some initial steps that we're taking. So I'll just preface all of that in that way. So do we have slides for these?
Yes.
Okay, so if we could just bring up slides. So when we're talking about the training piece, there's kind of choice one, right, is this discussion around original goal language, and option two, which is breaking that conversation into two distinct and separate goals. So the original goal language combined kind of both the practice side and organizational kind of function, with a prioritization of culture-specific providers. Option two, your first choice, and I'll ask for comments and then ultimately a vote, separates kind of the knowledge, skills, abilities for programmatic function, and then the TA and kind of capacity building for organizational functionality. So you all talked about the kind of distinct needs when it comes to training and technical assistance. And so I want to open it up. Do you want to keep choice one, goal language that kind of combines, or option two in separate goals? So that's kind of the first conversation and question I want to ask. I'll just ask for hands up, contributions, starting with you, Chair Harrington.
Sorry, I didn't mean to jump the line. So I've read goals A and B, and what I'm trying to understand is, in one case, like I'm looking at the top of page 3, goal A, I noticed between A and B, one's talking about service providers, where the other's talking about organizations. Goal A, knowledge and skills. Goal B, technical assistance. Goal A, program functionality. Goal B, organizational functionality. And my question is this. I respect the fact that our 3 counties have been in a different place of capacity building. And that also pertains to the community-based organizations and the service providers that we reach into. Different levels of numbers of those operating in our counties, and also the capacity of each of those. And so what I'd like to hear from our staff across the 3 counties is, what I'm trying to make sure is that we are doing things that lead to a positive destination while respecting where we're at. So I can't tell if we need to, I'm having difficulty appreciating if goal A, it sounds like it's a choice between A or B versus A and B.
No, Chair, so option 2 is A and B, even though it's, yeah, it says separate. The goals are just broken down into A and B. So it's not a choice between whether we need service providers or, program or organizational functionality. So it's really the distinction that we're asking for choice is, do you have one option that just includes both of those goals in one, or are we separating the goals into two? I mean, it's more or less, do you want to put it in one long sentence or have two distinct and separate goals that then have corresponding recommendations? So hopefully that's helpful. Chair Nicole, I see your hand.
Yes, but is it a distinction without a difference? That's what I can't figure out.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Nicole?
Personally, I think having the goals separated is helpful because when you are discussing program functionality and when you're discussing organizational functionality, I think there's a lot of nuance to the implementation of training and technical assistance. So by separating them, I think it allows you to add in more information around the implementation without trying to make it fall under one umbrella.
Good, thank you, Nicole. So that's an argument for option 2 to kind of draw the distinction between program and organizational. Can I open it up just on any additional thoughts? And then I'm going to ask us to vote by majority on option 1 or option 2. Is there any additional points of clarity? Chair Harrington?
I'm sorry
No, it's
to
okay.
ask this. Sitting on both this committee and the oversight committee, and I know I'm not unique in that, but our work will go to them. So these recommendations will be going to them, but also they'll be taking a look in their next annual reviews to see how we're performing to these goals. And so I was wondering, particularly for my 2 county commission reps here, based upon our experience thus far with the Oversight Committee and their first annual report, is there any benefit to keeping them in one versus the A and B, in your opinion?
Good, thank you, Chair. So I think that's a direct question on Commissioner Jayapal, and then Chair Smith. I know you've been relatively new into that work, so.
Thank you for that question, Chair Harrington. I don't see that it makes a difference to the Oversight Committee process which way we go here. They're going to be sending us, we're going to have a two-way communication flow because they're going to be sending us some recommendations of their own that actually overlap with recommendations that we're making here. I think the most important thing is clarity. And in my personal opinion, I think separating it into 2 goals does clarify 2 fairly distinct bodies of work.
Good, thank you. Chair Smith?
Going forward, I think it's somewhat confusing on the difference between program functionality versus organizational structure functionality. And what are we talking about anyway? Are we talking about, I'm going back, training and technical assistance? So to me, none of these goals even address what we're trying to accomplish. Aren't we trying to get training to our providers, getting training to our workers, and we're getting caught up in this really technical language is I'm not sure what it means. So I'm not going to vote no on this, but words mean things. Words really mean things. And I'm not sure who wrote this, but I do find the language challenging and somewhat frustrating. Just my thoughts.
No, I appreciate that, and maybe your peers around or colleagues around the table will add some context, but Nicole and then Mercedes.
Yeah, I think that the goal really is to maximize the functions of all service providers. And so if one of the needs is qualified staff to be able to do the day-to-day programs separating it allows a certain type of training to happen for those service providers that are directly doing the programs day to day. And then the organizational functionality is, you know, there's a lot of new nonprofits that are in existence that don't have maybe adequate support and technical assistance when it comes to allocation of funding and all of the different operational side of things that aren't direct service. So they might need training on how to operationalize those structures from day to day. And I think those types of training and assistance could be very different, but overall, altogether support the effectiveness of service provision in this area.
Yeah, thank you. Mercedes?
Yeah, I think that was a great delineation of the two, and I would just add, I think some examples might be helpful. So like the program functionality or things like trauma-informed training, culturally responsiveness, how to set up a welcoming environment. And then the organizational stuff, I think, is probably going to end up falling a lot on things like reporting and outcomes data collection, because we both need high quality staff who are able to do the work, especially because we're also being asked to do this work faster and faster and faster every day. And usually you would want to have your case manager, training under someone else for a little while before you give them their own caseload. And like most of these contracts do not come with that kind of option. They want that person to have a caseload the next day. So if we can streamline a lot of the training in that way, we can actually get that person their caseload faster. And then there's an absolute insatiable demand for outcome data. And I think for especially smaller organizations, if you don't have some sophisticated database system, you're like on Excel, right? And you're trying to figure out how to do this. I think there are lots of ways we can support that organizational functionality to get at a regional level both of those things that we want.
Good, thank you. Liam, did you want to jump in? Chair Smith, I don't know if that's an old hand or a new hand, but.
New hand.
Okay, let's go. Liam, do you want to respond real quick?
Yeah, very quick. So I just want to sympathize with Chair Smith. This language is really language and a debate that only bureaucrats and government nerds like myself could really enjoy. But when it comes down to the substance, I think Nicole and Mercedes put it really well. From our point of view, in terms of doing this work next, they are almost separate bodies of work because they are separate kinds of trainings and skill sets. And it's going to really help us move forward as staff, I believe, to treat them as separate bodies of work.
Chair Smith?
Well, you talked about the substance, and first of all, let's go back. In the very beginning of this whole discussion, people were frustrated because we have not made much progress. Well, hello. We're caught up in this bureaucratic work, and what is the desire, I believe, on the training and technical assistance is how do we get training and technical assistance to, number one, the nonprofits delivering the services and the people and the caseworkers who's actually doing the work. And we spent, I don't know how many months on language that we still don't know how we're getting there. That's my frustration in this. So I'm leaving this meeting today, and there's this whole section on training and technical assistance. And for the life of me, I could not go tell anybody, or I could not report back to my Board of County Commissioners and say what we've accomplished on trying to get our nonprofit caseworkers more training and assistance.
Yeah,
we're not there, folks.
Thank you, Chair. Let's go, Matt, and then I'm going to ask us to, with all the caveats and language, I ask us to choose an option because I think the recommendations is going to take some time as well. Matt?
Yeah, I don't think it matters greatly if we combine them or we keep them separate. As someone pointed out, and I apologize, I don't remember who, it's probably more clarity. But I want to pile on just a moment to Chair Smith's concerns, because I think there's a lot of validity there. What I have done, I also put in a resolution recommendation. We're not going to have much time, if any, to cover that. But the essence of this, I think we may be, and that's what my resolution was about, we're kind of, as I think Chair Smith is suggesting, we might be chasing the wrong thing here in terms of our language. The issue, to me, is finding the sources for all kinds of training. That's why it doesn't matter to me very much whether we separate them, because in either instance, we need a broad compendium of training. We need technical training on how to use an app if we get to an app point. We need technical training on how you deal with somebody when they're spitting in your face. Those are somewhat different trainings. We need organizational training for the not-for-profits, particularly the newer ones and the smaller ones, who need to understand how to go through the process of applying for different areas and the rules that apply to them, and on and on. So what I believe we need to do, and I believe Metro staff should take the lead on this, is let's identify the sources of training. My objection to the verbiage is actually when it talks about counties creating and supporting. I don't think we need to create and support. I think we need to find and coordinate and support. So to me, this should be about finding the different groups that are out there. There was some testimony from Work Systems to the effect at another meeting that there are 96 different not-for-profits who provide training that might be relevant to homelessness issues. You know, adding the counties and making it 99 gets us closer to a 3-digit number in terms of how many people are out there doing it. But it doesn't tell us who's able to do what, who's good at what kind of training, what kinds of methodologies are the right ones. Online training is not the right methodology for a great many people, particularly people of color, people in other areas that are not used to that. So I believe what we should be doing is directing Metro staff to go find, and getting a consultant is probably important for that, but find the different providers, coordinate them. This is not something that is geographically bound. It is something that is topically bound, pedagogically bound, and I think we are at a point where we need to, frankly, let's stop fussing about the particular language. Let's get on with it and find the providers and then figure out how we can make those types of education available to frontline workers, to back office workers, so that the people who are doing this extraordinarily difficult work have the training of whatever type is necessary to enable them to do their jobs the way they want to do them.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. So I'm going to pause there. I think that's an impassioned plea as we think about recommendations. So I'm going to hold, if we can hold that for a second, I want to come back to goal statement, right? Do we, I think I'm hearing, or at least I think I've heard, that there's at least no opposition to goal A and B being distinct and separate. Can I get a thumbs up? And I recognize, like, we can come back to language, but if I said the goal was we're trying to have folks have the access and knowledge and skills to operate at a high level as an organization and for service provision, that's how I read it. Maybe I'm reading it differently. Do folks feel okay, choice one, that we have two separate goals? Can I get a thumbs up if folks believe that having goal A and goal B offer an appropriate path? Does anybody disagree that just separating the two goals, with the caveats around language, and I think maybe we can come back to that in terms of making it, accessible, more accessible, but in concept, do folks agree on the goal A and goal B? Does anybody not vote for that? Okay, so I'm going to say we've approved goal A and B. The more complex part of the conversation, of course. And, Matt, I appreciate what you all named. What I'm not asking folks is to define what the training is, right? That's not the place that we're at. We're trying to initiate, right? That goal is the outcome, and we're trying to get to our first step forward. What is the recommendation you are making, without going into detail about what curriculum is and who does it and how much it costs and how, all those things. I think that's work that we need to do in the future. So if we can pull up the slides, I want us to look at the recommendation language. It is very high level. And I think, Matt, you just, gave us some piece around kind of who's, counties and Metro creating and supporting. I think you made some points there. Can we go to the recommendation language? Maybe? We're trying. There it is. So the original recommendation was a regional training institute, and it had kind of a platform like Power DMS. I think we had enough conversation. I'm just going to opine a little bit as a facilitator, right? I think we had a lot of conversation that said that people were not going down that path of that recommendation language. So in alignment with what you all just approved in terms of separating and drawing some distinction between kind of the needs of direct service staff, right? And Chair Smith, I think you named that, Matt, you reiterated it. And then the regional technical assistance for capacity building. And I know Mercedes, you've given us a lot of examples of those needs. Open it up for comments, questions, concerns with this language? Or do you feel like this is a initiation point, right? You're charging the counties and Metro to start exploring and supporting a regional training? Jump in, Mercedes. Oh, Valeria, do you want to?
Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a clarifying or?
Yes, clarifying. And maybe a quick, a couple edits that staff thought as we looked at this. So I just wanted to say that our hope was to try to keep it more high level, so it was inclusive of, Matt, just to your concern of different types of learning and curricula. But for goal A, we were thinking that we would add the word coordination after regional training. So it would read, counties and Metro create and support regional training coordination that supports the needs of direct service staff. And also the second support word on goal A to be replaced with meet. So counties and Metro create and support regional training coordination that meets the needs of direct service staff.
Can we do this in real time?
Oh.
Do we have live slides?
Yes.
I don't know if folks tracked better than I did. So goal A, counties and Metro are creating.
Create and support regional training coordination that meets the needs of direct
So
service
it's really
staff.
about coordinating, and I think that's an intentional set of language, coordinating training versus creating. But they're creating and supporting and coordinating?
It would be support, go ahead.
Save
Sorry.
us, Commissioner Jayapal, please.
That is a lot to ask that I save everybody.
well, it's
I'm
a
not
start.
sure.
It's a start.
I'm not sure I am up to that task. I mean, I think we just hear different things in different words. And I completely hear your concern, Matt. I'm wondering, does simply saying provide, because that's what we're talking about. We want to provide the appropriate training, that meets the needs of staff. And by provide, I don't necessarily mean that Metro and the counties provide it. We create a system that provides it, right? Isn't that what we're trying to get to?
Well, I think that's the question,
Mhm.
right? I mean, so the outcome, we've just had a conversation. We
Mhm.
want people to be prepared. We want organizations to be able to operate at a high level. How do we get there, right? We've talked about training that's regionalized, that meets all the needs that folks have described. How do we say it?
Counties and Metro provide regional training,
How about
et cetera, et cetera?
Are they providing?
identify and provide?
Sure.
Mercedes,
Yeah.
let's go to you. Mercedes, please.
I would support the coordinate language because I think it's important to keep in mind that there are some trainings that can really be centralized that are like licensed credential trainings, right? Like mental health first aid, right? That you just want everybody to do. But then there are other kinds of trainings that do need to be organization and program specific. So more you want to set a standard for the outcomes that people have. And some of those things are going to be provided in a centralized training opportunity. Some of those things need to be done at the organization level. But I think coordinating and supporting regional training standards that meet the needs of direct service providers might work.
So I'm hearing coordinate and support. Commissioner Jayapal, and then Christina, I know you're up. Oh, that's an old one. All right, Christina?
I want to go a little bit up on the original recommendation language, the word universal. I'm having a hard time with that one because I know that for BIPOC communities, it's more about providing universal training. Like if we get rid of universal and just put support technical assistance, because for BIPOC communities, also about breaking the tech barriers. A lot of times they don't have internet, they don't know how to use the internet, especially, the ones that don't speak the language, or like mom and pops, they have difficulties. So by putting universal, to me, it's like putting a barrier.
Yeah, thank you for that. So, Christina, just as a follow-up, so when you look at the goal A, the new recommendation language, so you won't see that universal, and then with the additional language that I heard around coordinate and support, is that in taking away create? It's being replaced by coordinate and support? Is that what I'm seeing some heads? Christina, does that address the concern that you raised, right? So it's not kind of universal, or Valeria, you want to? Well, Christina, would that address, like, do you have that same concern when you read goal A and B? I guess that's the follow-up.
No, I won't have the same concern, but I still think, on the goal, that universal should be removed if we're gonna leave the goal. Because I don't wanna create confusion when somebody gets like, oh, it's universal, and they do like the same cookie cutter, right? We need different shapes.
Yeah, so the goal language won't include that, so that's confirmed. Thank you for Valeria.
Christina, maybe we could add to goal A at the end with sensitivity to the needs of BIPOC agencies. Would that?
Well,
Yeah.
Okay. And then goal B, I believe, specifically also calls out a similar, among culturally specific providers. So then we would have it in both of the new.
I know I'm asking folks to do real-time edits. I think it's hard. I'm having a hard time tracking what we're changing, but I think in goal A, it would be counties and Metro coordinate and support regional training that supports the needs of direct service staff with the additional language sensitive to culturally specific communities, providers, whatever the language was that you named, okay? And then subsequently, the same kind of language with goal B. Nicole?
Just a clarifying question. So when we say coordinate, we're not creating new trainings. We are going to ensure that if a nonprofit needs training for their service providers, that we will connect them with a training, or will fund the training, or what does that mean, coordinate? I just would love clarity.
Well, you pressed your button.
Okay.
Because I think you want to respond.
I'm happy to provide that perspective, Nicole, from a regional point of view. I think I would like to bring it back to the original goal of the TCPB, and that is to align things that are already existing and make them a synergy across the region, so that we're not duplicating, that we're actually benefiting from what is already happening out there, and then creating a standard for frontline workers or different kinds of frontline workers, a standard then internally to organizations. So the coordination piece is really going out there, understanding what's happening, and bringing folks together and creating a system of standards. So I could say a lot more, but I'm going to shut
But
up.
it wouldn't necessarily restrict creation, right? It just means that if Multnomah County is creating a new training and Clackamas is not creating the same new training, that they're aligning, supporting, and coordinating each other, right? Let's go Matt and then Chair Harrington.
Yeah, so to your last comment, no, I think by and large, it does eliminate creation, because there's lots out there. Now, I completely agree. I think it was Mercedes that, sometimes it has to be specific to the organization and things of that sort, clearly correct. And that's, I think, kind of outside this particular goal. That's something each organization would do. And like so many of these areas, these things are additive and cumulative. But to me, I like the edits that are going on. I think they really address the concern that I feel so strongly about, because the resources are there. They're not supported. They're not coordinated. You got to find them.
Right.
And all of that. And I think there are other organizations, Work Systems comes to mind, PCC, Mount Hood, and tons of others who know how to create this stuff. So since Ben is so fond of real-time edits, I can't resist, because I think Christina's point about the sensitivity to particular groups, BIPOC and others, I would like to add into the language sensitivity to the needs of individual learners as well. It's not just the organizations. Some people learn by kinetic action. Some people learn by reading. Some people learn audio. On and on. I could elaborate on that for a very
Matt,
long time.
So can I ask if meet the needs of direct service staff, does that align with individual learners? Like, so if it's meets the needs of, or
Individual staff. I want to get some, because the same program for a group might have to be broken out.
Okay, yep, individual direct service staff. I think, yep, we've made that edit in real time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Harrington?
Thank you. I just wanted to point out that I'm having a little trouble following all this discussion. I understand the words that are in front of me right now. So thank you. I just want to make sure that what I'm seeing on the screen is what we're looking to.
I sure hope so, Chair Harrington, because that's what I'm looking at too. And I think it reflects the conversation we just had. At the risk of moving us on, can I ask, with the additions we made for goal A, and I think the correlating with sensitivity to the needs of BIPOC, and, service providers and agencies would also go in goal B. It would now read, counties and Metro coordinate and support regional training that meets the needs of individual direct service staff with sensitivity to the needs of BIPOC agencies. Do we have general agreement? Yep.
Could we include meet the needs of diverse, or meets the diverse needs of individual direct service staff? Maybe to get more intentionally to Matt's points, diverse needs.
Write it down.
Okay.
So me and Chair Harrington could see it.
Okay.
And all of us in the room. I think, like, wordsmithing is not my favorite thing to do. So what I'm going to ask is that, we can massage the language a little bit coming out of today, but I want to get agreement that this recommendation language kind of meets that initiation threshold, is going to start us in the right direction towards the goal. Can I ask for a thumbs up? I'm good to go. A thumb sideways? Yeah, let's move on. Any thumbs down? So thumbs up means I'm good. Thumb sideways? For A and B. B says the same thing, but it's focused on organizations. No, let's go A first, because we just did all that work. Thanks, Mercedes. I was trying to jam it down. Is there anybody opposed? I can't see everybody's thumbs, so I'll just ask, is there any opposition? Michael?
Sorry to jump in on this. I just, one thing I don't want to happen is we're up at a regional level, and we can't, with our goals, we can't deep dive too deep. If you guys are trying to create a regional thing that meets the needs of individual, that seems really specific to me. So and I'm not a wordsmith either. The whole thing, I thought, for the goals, and I thought with our discussion today, we're debating the merits of training and technical assistance again. And it feels like when we were doing ARLA way back when, these are all good things that we're doing. It's kind of, we need the meat and bones, kind of like what Chair Smith was saying, where once you guys provided the recommendations, I think that's where we all got excited as a group. And then maybe it's because I'm not a wordsmith, but I just think our overall objectives need to be broad, where we can come up with a regional solution to it. If we're deep diving with how we're saying our goals, I think it's going to put the TCPB staff in a tough position to try to find this solution for us.
Yeah, I appreciate you naming that. I think what I heard in the intent of this conversation is that it's just person-centered. It's not that every single individual gets their own particular specific training, but that we consider the needs of the individual, multiple learning types, all the things that folks have named. So hopefully, in the spirit of what we're trying to do, it doesn't get bogged down in respect to what you just said, Mike, but actually just holds the spirit of person-centered and focused work. So can we go to goal B? I'm looking at the time. Mercedes, I want to hear from you. Goal B, because I think we would say the same thing. It's coordinate and support regional technical assistance for capacity building. But Mercedes, please jump in.
Yeah, so my comment is just that the capacity building needs to be an investment. So technical assistance and investment in capacity building, because like, for example, we were using the outcomes database thing. You can train people how to like do good outcomes data collection, but then if they don't have enough of an admin budget to actually afford to buy that database system, it's kind of all for naught, right? And so I just think that this is a space where if we want organizations to be doing more of their HR, doing more of their onboarding, doing more of this database work, it has to come with an investment, and these smaller organizations are the ones who are least likely to have like a NICRA indirect rate from the federal government, and so we're likely getting the smallest admin that basically the smallest admin that's being negotiated, which is probably the least amount of resources to do that technical work.
That's helpful. And so you're really drawing a distinction between technical assistance, not including investment, right? He's calling out investment very specifically. Okay, that's, Liam, please.
That's the clarification I needed. What
Okay.
you just clarified. Thank you.
So with goal B language, with the amendment from Mercedes, how do folks feel? Any conversation, questions, concerns about the language that's there? I see a thumbs up from Christina. Thumbs up, thumbs ups. Anybody in opposition? Okay, good job. All right. Dare I say, this makes me nervous, even thinking about the last one. So the last element of work, and I'm going to try to push us all, and I want to be respectful of our process. So, and of people's time. So we're at 5 minutes of. I'm going to ask us to pull up the language because this has been a ongoing and complex conversation that we've had around recruitment intention, particularly as it relates to equitable pay. So option one is kind of the same choices as we've had before. There's kind of option one, which was the goal language, which was fair and equitable pay for SHS-funded agencies and providers. That was very, we had lots of conversations around that. The option two, based on discussions as a proposal, was goal A, that SHS-funded agencies and providers throughout the region pay livable wages to direct service staff. And goal B, which is kind of two separate element of work or analysis, that distribution of pay from lowest to highest paid staff within SHS-funded agencies, providers is equitable throughout the region. I'm going to open it up. I'm going to start with goal A. I'm going to start by asking.
Can I just say something really quick? I just wanted to point out that back in December, the group actually identified priority A, employment recruitment, rather than goal B. So just for your consideration, that's what you voted on specifically back in December.
I was informed that a couple people have a hard stop, which means we will lose quorum. So what I'm going to ask, at the risk of feeling like we failed today, no, we made some great progress. I'm going to ask that we come back to this. I don't know if, I mean, this conversation has proven itself to be complex, but I want folks to just sit with what's on the screen because I think there's a couple pieces, and I'll just remind you between now and the next meeting to think about goals as kind of where we want to be. I think we've talked about all the complexities to getting there, right? But I want you to sit with whether the idea that agencies and providers that are doing this complex work, we should be paying a livable wage. And then I think there's this subsequent conversation around basically, you know, executives getting a lot more than frontline folks. I'm going to flash forward to some recommendations because I just want folks to see it on the screen and sit. If we can go to the next slide. Because the original was a mapping and some guidance and a framework. And you can see the new recommendations that include a set of bullets that are multiple kind of steps into kind of that journey towards that goal language. Mapping the current wage and benefit conditions, so right, really understanding the landscape. a framework that gives guidance to counties and funded agencies and providers, ensuring or considering ways to account for and compensate for lived experience, language competencies, and bilingual, bicultural staff, culturally specific organizations, and then challenges faced by organizations with multiple funding streams. So this is not language that we are going to be able to solve tonight, but I'm going to challenge you all to really sit with this and maybe going back through some of our meeting summaries, really reflecting back on these conversations, because this is going to be difficult to jump into. It's really important work, and we certainly don't have time for today. So Chair Smith, you can help lead our closing, but I'd love to turn it over to you real quick.
Yeah, thank you for this. I think this is the most important goal, and we're not giving it the time that it needs. The success of this entire program in the Tri-Counties is dependent upon a viable workforce delivering the services to help our most vulnerable. If indeed pay equity is the issue, then I suggest we talk to the governor through her emergency declaration to fix this. Oh, wait, as a matter of fact, I already did that for Clackamas County. She was shocked. I gave her the whole pay scale. If you're starting a case manager out at $21 an hour, that is not a living wage. They're going to be homeless themselves. Long story short, there's a scale, $26, $29. A retention wage is $31. You know what her reaction was? My God, I had no idea that you're dealing with pay equity on this. I says, oh yeah. Her reaction was, by all means. It was up to me. I'd say, pay him whatever you need. Does this need a legal analysis? Yes, it does, Governor. So at Clackamas County's level, I am reaching out to the governor to help fix our nonprofits who say pay equity is a deterrent. Just saying, I know we want to go. We're all tired. We've all had meetings today, but that's where Clackamas County is headed.
Well,
thank you very much.
I appreciate that, Chair. Thanks for leaving us in that inspirational space and challenging us to rise up. With that, Liam has his card up.
Yep. One, Chair Smith, I want to say your energy and your contributions are very welcome. Thank you for showing up today, and thank you for doing the homework that it takes to join in. I want to remind everybody on the committee here that for our staff and for county staff, when you approve these goals, they represent a green light to do the work. So I'm satisfied that we approved one of the goals or two of the goals today with Mercedes' amendment to that second one. And we will get to it next time. I also want to reassure you that we're not going to spend the entire time wordsmithing a goal in the next meeting. We will actually be getting to other forms of work too. But remember, these are green lights that we can go about doing the work. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate y'all. So we'll call the meeting adjourned at whatever, I can't see that clock, 6:03 or so. But great conversation today. I know we had aspirations to get farther, but I think the conversation needed to happen. So with that, goodbye, good night. Thanks for being here.